Wayne, I have a question. Could you elaborate on the PID workshop?
Sure. If I could step back to just make sure that we're putting it into the right category, the PID workshop fits into the Class A appraisal.
Yeah.
As I had talked about earlier, there's 3 levels of appraisal: Class C, Class B, Class A. Class A is the only appraisal that the SEI allows lead appraisers to provide the official results of the appraisal for determination of an official maturity level. So to do that official maturity level, organizations typically develop what we call PIDs, P-I-I-D, Practice Implementation Indicator Descriptors. Those are basically a database or a roadmap of where the practices have been enacted by projects by pointing to the evidence. So for example, if we pick one of the process areas, let's
for
pick,
example, requirements management.
Yeah, requirements management, that's a good one. If we were going to collect the evidence of the projects that were doing requirements management, and let's, for example, say there were, 6 projects in the appraisal. For a Class A appraisal with 6 projects, we have to collect the requirements documents, the change requests, all kinds of artifacts that the projects actually made. So the PIDs are actually the roadmap, like I said before, of here's the practice, here's the project, and here's where the artifact for that project is. And the reason we do the workshop is because these preparation for a Class A appraisal is very, very big. And we want organizations to start right by understanding what is looked for in the model. There's one other key thing that organizations should know is that when we're developing these PIDs, part of the Class A appraisal has a requirement that we get direct artifacts and indirect artifacts. You may be wondering, what's the difference between a direct artifact
what
and an
is
indirect?
a direct artifact and what is an indirect artifact?
Sure. A direct artifact would be the work product that typically comes out of enacting a practice.
Yeah.
The typical work product that's a result of performing a practice. So, for example, requirements development, process area. The obvious one, the requirement document. Many companies call it the SRS or the systems requirement specification, things like that. That's the direct artifact. Indirect artifacts are things like, off the top of my head, an example could be the report from a review. If the requirements were reviewed by a team or inspected, the results of that meeting would be documented to show that that requirements document was reviewed. So the results of a meeting is not the intent of doing requirements development, but it's an indirect artifact that shows that the process was
So we have these direct artifacts and indirect artifacts, and they compose our PIDs.
That's correct. The PIDs point to the artifacts.
Where they are.
Where they reside.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when we do the appraisal, this becomes the tool that organizations use. The appraisal team, I should say, uses the PID as a tool to go down and then validate that, yes, that practice is performed by all projects, either fully, partially, or not at all, that type of thing.
Yeah. After the SCAMPI appraisal, the SCAMPI C or SCAMPI B appraisal, we have the action planning workshop. Could you elaborate on the action planning workshop, what it is?
Absolutely. That, in my mind, it's not like putting the cart before the horse, but the action planning workshop is probably one of the most important activities that an organization perform. I recommend that they do action planning right after their appraisal. So as we talked about, Class C appraisals, Class B appraisals, typically help an organization baseline. They know where they are, where the practices are fulfilled, and where they have deficiencies or gaps.
Yes.
So coming out of a Class C appraisal, for example, we have say a map or a diagram that shows that some of the practices are fulfilled, some of them there was no evidence, so there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
So the idea of action planning workshop is to take the results from an appraisal, and the appraisal has findings.
Yeah.
We analyze those findings and work with the team, internal in the company or the organization, to understand what do we work on. We break the findings into, or we group the findings into recommendations or categories of areas of opportunity, the things that the organization will work on.
Yeah.
We usually group them into, say, 5 to 7 areas. For example, in level 2, if an organization had deficiencies in their project planning and the project monitoring and control process, then we would group all those issues into maybe a project management process improvement.
Since they're more interrelated to each other?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then the action plan, that's the first part of action planning, is to group the findings into what are the recommendations to fix those findings.
Okay.
The next step would be to take those and develop a plan for how the organization should go forward, how to resource, who should be developing the processes or modifying them, who will be training them, along with the schedule of a timeline of activities.
So they will have their list of deficiencies for the project planning or project monitoring process area, and they will know which activities or sub-activities they have to improve in order to comply with this process area.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's move on to, so the action planning workshop is actually determining the resource requirement and the things which have to be done.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so how would it be if they don't do the action planning workshop? I mean, okay, they do the scan PC and they just get a picture of what has to be improved, what has to be done, because they'll have the red lights, the yellow lights, and the green ones, which indicate they're doing such things.
Right. That puts the organization at great risk, to be honest, Ujel, primarily because an appraisal, as I said, is basically like investigation.
Yeah.
You know, it just identifies where the problems are. And in an organization that's just starting process improvement or does not have a good infrastructure for performing process improvement, they don't know where to begin. So the findings sit there, and many companies will wrestle and wrestle and wrestle, and there'll be many meetings happening, things like that. But there's no focused effort on determining what actions do we need to take. So action planning was developed, and the process that we take the organizations through, primarily for the purpose of accelerating a program.
So it's actually the project planning of the deficiencies which were found in the Scampi appraisal.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And as I may have said in one of our other segments, but process improvement should be performed like a project. So if you think of it from that perspective, the findings are basically the requirements of what needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
So, and the recommendations are the actions to fix those. So we develop plans, and these, by the way, are then presented to management for acceptance and approval, such that the organization then will carry out those plans, staff, resource, etc., to start doing process improvement.